In the heart of Freetown at 14 Bomba Street, there was a compound with a chilling nickname, the Devil's Waiting Room. It wasn't haunted by ghosts, but by a living, breathing nightmare named Madame Gold. For her, tenants weren't people. They were walking banknotes. Her heart, it seemed, had turned to stone long ago. Every morning, before the sun even thought about rising, the sharp, heavy thud of her wooden stick, the iron cane, would shatter the peace. She'd slam it against flimsy doors, her voice cracking like a whip. Pay me, or pack your rags. Her cruelty knew no bounds. Take Sister Comfort, a widow trying to feed her children by selling smoked fish. When her son was burning up with malaria, she pleaded for just 3 days of grace on the rent. 3 days. Instead of a shred of mercy, Madame Gold dragged her by the hair across the dusty yard, shaming her in front of her weeping children. Then there was Mr. Johnson, a proud taxi driver who had lived there for 8 years. For a debt of just 20,000 leones, less than $2, Madame Gold had him thrown into a filthy police cell. The old man, once so dignified, emerged broken. He vanished into the night, another soul crushed by her reign. The tenants lived in a state of what psychologists call learned helplessness. They hated her. They prayed for her downfall in hushed whispers. But poverty was a cage, and they were trapped inside it. They believed Madame Gold was untouchable. Why? Because she had the law in her pocket, in the form of a corrupt, brutal officer named Inspector Bangora. He was her muscle, her enforcer, her guarantee that no one would ever fight back. But the winds of change were about to blow. The entire atmosphere of the compound shifted on a Tuesday with the arrival of a young woman named Amina. She didn't look like much, barely 20, with a single worn canvas bag slung over her shoulder, but she had eyes that seemed to look right through you, seeing the things you tried to hide. When she paid her rent, she didn't just pay for 1 month. She calmly handed over 6 months' worth, in crisp, new banknotes. Madame Gold's eyes lit up with greed. She saw a cash cow, a golden goose. She had no idea she had just invited a hurricane into her home. For weeks, Amina was like a ghost. She moved quietly, spoke little, and simply observed. She saw everything. The leaky roofs that dripped misery onto sleeping families, which Madame Gold refused to fix. The fat rats that scurried in the corners. Unafraid, she heard the muffled sobs of Sister Comfort late at night, a sound that tore at the fabric of the darkness. Amina wasn't just a tenant. She was a witness, gathering evidence, feeling the collective pain of the compound. The explosion finally came on a Saturday. Madame Gold, already furious over some personal betrayal, unrelated to the tenants, needed an outlet for her rage. She decided to target the quiet girl. She burst into Amina's room, her face a mask of fury, spewing lies about burnt candles and fire hazards. "You want to burn my house down?" she shrieked. Amina calmly denied it. There were no candles. There was no fire. And it was this calmness that enraged the landlady even more. In that moment, Madame Gold did what she always did to assert her dominance, to put people back in their place. She swung her hand in a vicious, open-palmed slap. The sound echoed in the tiny room. The slap landed, but the reaction was something the compound had never ever seen. Amina didn't cry. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't even flinch. She simply turned her head back, looked Madame Gold dead in the eye, and said with a chilling stillness, "You shouldn't have done that." Before Madame Gold could even process those words, she tried to strike again, fueled by pure rage and humiliation. But this time, her hand never landed. Amina's hand shot out and caught her wrist. It wasn't a struggle. It was a lockdown. A steel trap. The landlady, a woman used to physically dominating everyone, thrashed and pulled. But she was completely pinned by a girl half her size and half her age. Enraged and deeply embarrassed that the other tenants were now peeking out, Madame Gold did what she always did when things got out of hand. She called for her heavy artillery. "Inspector," she screamed. "Inspector Bangora." Inspector Bangora arrived with 2 of his thuggish officers, swaggering into the compound like a king entering his court. He was ready to do what he did best, break bones and egos. He expected to find a sobbing, terrified girl. Instead, he found a smiling warrior. "Ah, the quiet one is causing trouble," he sneered, cracking his knuckles. "Let's teach her some respect." His 2 officers moved in to grab Amina. What happened next was a blur. It was like watching water flow and a tree fall at the same time, with a series of movements so fast they were hard to follow. Later identified as an advanced form of martial arts, the 2 large officers were sent flying. One crashed against the wall with a sickening thud. The other landed in a heap by the water pump. The crowd of tenants gasped. The climax arrived when the stunned Inspector Bangora, all 200 pounds of him, lunged at Amina himself. In a move that defied belief, she grabbed him by the collar of his uniform and, with one hand, lifted him clean off the ground. His feet dangled uselessly in the air. The invincible lion of Bomba Street was now helpless, his eyes wide with terror. Amina brought him close, her voice a deadly whisper in his ear. "You are a disgrace to this uniform." And with a casual toss, as if throwing away a bag of trash, she threw the mighty inspector into the open, stinking sewer gutter that ran through the yard. The tenants watched, their minds unable to comprehend the scene. The man who had terrorized them for years was now shivering, covered in filth, sputtering and begging for his job. That's when Amina held up her phone. "I recorded everything," she said calmly. The assault, the illegal arrest attempt, everything. The inspector's face went pale. He and his men scrambled out of the gutter and fled, disappearing from Bamba Street for good. With the corrupt police gone, and the tenants watching in stunned, silent awe, Amina finally turned to the trembling Madame Gold. The landlady was cowering against the wall, expecting a beating, expecting the same cruelty she had shown others for a decade, but Amina didn't hit her. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she used a weapon far more powerful, far more painful, the truth. Her voice, which had been steel moments before, softened with a strange, unexpected empathy. "Why?" Amina asked gently. "Why are you so angry all the time?" Madame Gold just stared, confused. "You think this makes you strong?" Amina continued, gesturing to the broken tenants and the filthy compound. "Your stick, your bribes. That's not power. That's fear. Real power. Real power is being able to be kind when the world has been mean to you." And those words, spoken with genuine compassion, finally broke through the layers of bitterness that had encased the landlady's heart for 10 years. On the dirt of the compound, surrounded by the very people she had oppressed, Madame Gold finally broke down. She confessed everything. How her husband had abandoned her a decade ago, leaving her with nothing but the house and a soul filled with acid. She had spent 10 long years trying to make everyone else feel as small, as worthless, as discarded as she felt inside. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was absolute. The reign of terror at 14 Bamba Street was over. Under Amina's quiet guidance, the infamous iron cane was snapped in two and thrown into the fire. Rent prices were slashed. Leaky roofs were finally repaired. The compound, once a prison, slowly transformed into a sanctuary, a community. Madame Gold, the wicked landlady, began to sit with Sister Comfort, not to demand money, but to share a cup of tea. She was learning how to be a mother to the compound, not just a landlord. 2 years later, the day came for Amina to leave. She packed her single canvas bag, just as she had arrived. But this time, the compound didn't watch her in silence. They mourned her departure. She was their guardian angel, the one who brought peace not with wings and a halo, but with her fists and her heart. As Amina walked down the road toward the next village, the next story, she left behind more than just a repaired compound. She left behind a woman who had once prayed only for money, but who now prayed for the strength to keep her heart open. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next one. See you soon.